Hello everybody, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And welcome to It Takes Two, a podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And in this week's episode we watched The Wild and Madagascar 1.
Yeah, well, it's just called Madagascar. It's not called
being
Madagascar
there's like
1.
19 Madagascar spin-offs, TV show about penguins, like you have to be...
Yes, the original Madagascar movie from 2005.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Because The Wild came out in 2005 as well.
I think it actually 2006 in the end, but within a year of each other.
So these movies are really similar to the point where I halfway stopped paying attention because...
To which one of them?
Both.
Both?
Both.
It's intentional. DreamWorks went into production after they heard that Disney were making The Wild, and they wanted to undermine The Wild, so they made their own movie with the same premise, and they made Madagascar, which, as you are well aware, and as you basically have just stated, was wildly more successful.
And I don't know, like, I'm going to get into it, but, yeah, they're very similar.
Yep.
Like, everything about them similar, and I think Madagascar wins out in popularity for one simple fact, which I will get into momentarily.
It also came out first, even though the other one went into production first.
Yeah, well that's what happens. Production hell is hell. That's why it's called production hell. And if your movie takes longer, like there is a big difference. Animation style, because they're both CG.
Yep.
The Wild, they're less people-like. What's the term for it? No.
Realistic?
No. They're
anthropomorphized.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the Wild, they try to make them more realistic. I think. Whereas in Madagascar, they're very deliberately.
Cartoonish.
They're a real style. There was a choice made.
Yeah.
You know.
The Wild, they are crummy-looking CGI animals.
Yes.
But in Madagascar, they're very... I was going to say dramaticized, but that's words. They're more dramatic looking.
Yeah.
Like all their exploitations. Jeebus, I'm having a bad day.
Do we need to stop recording?
No, it's fine. They're more expressive when it comes to their emotional, which it doesn't come off from The Wild because they look like animals, just crummy looking.
Well, I mean,
CGI
that was
ones.
Disney's excuse with the recent Lion King movie, which we won't go into too much now, but that they couldn't make them look like they were having expressions because real animals don't, but real animals do. You've seen our cat. He's the most expressive little thing I've ever seen. Sure.
So we'll start off with The Wild, because the opening scene is the name of the character, Samson, talking to his son, Ryan, which is a terrible name for a lion.
Ryan the lion.
Ryan the lion. Talking up his, self when he lived in the wild.
Yeah, so both movies... Spoiler alert, both movies' opening sequence is a fantasy.
Yeah.
Because Madagascar opens with...
Chris Rock.
Yeah, Chris Rock's character, whose name Marty.
I'm going to refer to them as the actors because...
Yeah. So it starts off with Marty swinging, Tarzaning through a jungle in slow motion. Yeah, and running and whatever, and it turns out he's just on a treadmill looking at a painting.
Yeah.
Because he's in a shitty little zoo. And the other one, The Wild, starts with Kiefer Sutherland narrating this his adventures in the wild to his son, but he's never actually been in the wild.
But that comes up as a main plot point later.
Yeah, it's really obvious the whole way through though.
Yeah.
So it starts off with they both start off with the main character, one of the main characters fantasizing, but also both of them start off with this idea that one of the characters who is in the zoo, because they both cut and they're in a zoo, and in Madagascar it's Marty, and in The Wild it's Ryan, one of the characters wants to leave and wants to go to the wild. And that is our inciting incident, I should say, for both movies.
The thing that I found interesting with the differences was in the wild they're waiting for nighttime to do their thing, to be animals, but in Madagascar they're waiting for daytime for the museum to open so they can show off.
Yeah, so it's interesting because in the wild they're in New York Zoo, which seems to be it's in New York State but not in New York City, because they then end up in the city later on and they don't know what they're doing. So in the wild it's a bigger zoo and they've got proper enclosures, and then they act like animals during the day, and at night they all meet up. It's very Toy Story.
That whole sequence. Sorry, finish what you were saying.
I can't remember. They all meet up and have they're having a curling competition, which is a weird thing for them to be doing.
It's such a bizarre sequence because I keep wanting to say Simba.
Ryan?
Samson.
Oh, Samson
is the captain of their curling team.
Yeah.
With a giraffe. Is it
a snake a koala?
And a koala.
What were you gonna say?
Hippo's Madagascar.
Hippo Madagascar, yeah.
And...
No, you just have Richard Kind as the most annoying character I've ever seen in a movie.
Which one was that one?
The snake.
There's a note I've got here. All the characters are unlikable.
In the wild or Madagascar or both?
In the wild.
Yeah, I don't like any of them.
Samson's a liar. The giraffe, who's neurotic and obsessed with being single.
The giraffe pisses me off because both movies piss me off in the fact that they have one female character as the token female character.
Yeah. And
both of them have a couple of very minor female animals. I had to look into it to figure out were there any other female voice actresses or anything. But they both, in their main core group, have one female animal. And in the wild, she spends her whole time talking about the fact that she's single, the fact that she doesn't have any kids, and it's like this obsessive thing. And the whole way through it, the squirrel, so she's a giraffe, and the squirrel is in love with her and is hitting on her the whole way through.
But it's not like in love with her.
No, it's just creepy.
It's a creepy, like, no, it's not bad as Pepe Le Pew, but it's very, like... Yeah. It's very milk crate.
Yeah, it's real creepy, and then when it gets to the end of the movie... this isn't a huge spoiler because it's irrelevant to the actual plot, but when it gets to the end of the movie and he finally gives up on her, then she kisses him, she's like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what? It's like, what? You're trying to teach people that, women will keep saying no over and over again and then they'll just change their minds because they're desperate?
Yeah.
It pissed me off.
Like I said, none of the characters are likable. The accents are super weird throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, you mean the fact that they have a koala from London?
They have a koala from London. If people don't know, koalas are native to Australia, so if they've got an Australia, I wouldn't say Hugh Jackman because he's a bit big, but
there's Eddie Izzard, who's decently big, but not I guess not Hugh Jackman level. But I mean, there's plenty of Australian actors.
They could have got a discount Hemsworth.
Yeah. What annoyed me, because I looked it up,
especially then,
is the characters that do have different accents. So Eddie Izzard is being Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
That's, but the other characters, there's weird Indian stereotype pigeons.
Yeah, which made no sense.
And there was a few other ones. There's dung beetles that are Germanic. Yeah, and the Canadian geese with the real stereotype Canadian accents. And just Canadian phrasing, but not how actual Canadians speak, just stereotype stuff. And I looked it up. They're not played by Canadians. The Indian pigeon's not played by an Indian man, and the dung beetles aren't played by Germans or whatever they were supposed to be. So they have all these weird stereotype nationalities playing animals that don't make sense with those nationalities anyway.
Yeah.
And the kangaroo is an Australian, does, but none of them are from that place.
Yeah.
So it's really, there's something really strange about it. But I mean, the Indian thing does come into Madagascar as well, because obviously you have Sacha Baron Cohen playing an African animal with a weird Indian accent, which is also bizarre. Why?
Yeah, there's
why do either of them have these weird stereotypes in them?
Because the note I have is crackhead pigeons.
Yeah.
And then Southeast Asian accents.
Yeah. It's really strange. And
there's a lot of...
The geese, it really pissed me off when we got as far as the geese, because by the time we got to the geese, we'd had multiple others of these things, which is why I started looking up their actual nationalities. And what the geese, because the reason I looked it up is because the geese annoyed me, even though I love Brother Bear, in which there are two. I was going to say meese because I was just saying geese. There's two moose in Brother Bear who are stereotypical Canadians, but they're genuinely funny, first of all, which these guys weren't, but also they're played by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, who are a Canadian comedy duo. So it makes sense if you're, having guest stars who are Canadian comedy, Canadian comedians and actors, and you're putting them in as two moose, let them be their Canadian stereotypes.
Yeah.
But when you're putting in, you're like, oh, well, it's a Canadian goose, so we're going to hire some American dude to do a shitty Canadian accent and a stereotype. It's like, why?
And the other stereotype, which we almost missed over, is the alligators in the sewer.
Yes.
That have a very sort of...
They're real. They both movies do this thing where they have the stereotype of like a New Yorker with a real strong New York accent giving really complicated directions.
Yeah,
but it's funny because in Madagascar what they do is he goes up to a horse, but it's a police horse with a police officer on it, and the horse is like, oh yeah, you just do this. He's like, thanks officer, and then you hear the police officer on the back of the horse like radio and be like, yeah, there's a zebra here. I'm watching it cross. No, it's actual zebra.
No, because what he says is, can I shoot it?
Oh yeah, can I shoot it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the alligators come off a very sort of, I would say, if I was going to place the accent in a negative stereotype, it sounds like Italian American.
Yeah.
Like that real, like watch an episode of Sopranos, but like not an episode of Sopranos, like a parody
Cake Boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that real, you're right, it's very Italian American. I think they did a similar thing with the horse, but it's not as obvious. But they both movies, I thought was interesting that they both had zoo animals on the loose and, animals that live in New York, giving them stereotypical, complicated, long-winded directions to somewhere in New York.
Yeah. Madagascar is a much better movie.
Yeah.
The penguins I liked because they came off as like a ragtag sort of POW escape sort of back to our...
Apparently they originally... The guy, I think it's the guy who wrote Madagascar, had originally written a movie with the penguins as the main characters, and then when Madagascar started getting written, he was like, oh, well, just shoehorn these in here. But his original idea was they were the Beatles, but penguins.
Okay.
And then he was like, let's make them like these military nuts instead. Which is a weird...
British penguins also doesn't make a lot of sense, being that penguins are from the southern hemisphere. Anyway.
The penguins kind of... I feel the same way, I think, about the penguins as I do about Minions, in that...
They're funny as a side character.
Yeah, when I originally watched Madagascar and when I originally watched Despicable Me, I thought they were funny, and they're funny in that context. And then someone went, they're funny, let's, milk this as much as possible and make them the most annoying, worst thing ever. I don't think the penguins got quite the same treatment as Minions, but it seems like they've gone down a similar route.
Yeah, in both the movies they end up on an island.
Yes.
In Madagascar, I'm going to give you one guess where they end up. In the wild, they just end up on a random... It looks... Well, wildebeest are native to Africa, right? So it's somewhere in Africa...
Also, there's native lions there because the wildebeest have like flashbacks where they had native lions attacking and they've wiped out the lion population.
Yeah, and there's also like a volcano, and that's why the green crates that Ryan hid in to escape from his dad, who is a pathological liar, ends up because they're an animal rescue and they're rescuing animals from an island that's doomed because it's got a giant volcano on it. Yeah,
so in the wild, Ryan
finds out is sick of his dad.
Yeah, he's sick of his dad, but he wants to go out to the wild, but he also can't roar, so people make fun of him for not being able to roar, and then his friends cause a stampede, and when he tries to stop them, he can't, and then when he tries to explain to his dad that he was trying to stop them, he didn't cause the stampede, his dad won't listen to him, even though he's been lying to him the whole time that he won't listen to him. He's just a really bad dad. So Ryan goes off, he runs away, but he hides in this green shipping container, and then it is closed up and starts to ship away, and then he's like, no, I changed my mind, I want to go back, but he can't.
Yeah.
And he ends up being shipped off to Africa, but it's they're using the crates to rescue animals who are going to die in this volcanic eruption.
Yeah, and then they chase them on a stolen boat and just throw physics out of the side of how a tugboat that's designed to go around the harbour ends up following a container
I was
ship.
like, how have they not run out of gas like so many times? They've got to run out of fuel before they even get there, never mind the fact that they then turn around and come back at the end.
Yeah, and then they run into a wildebeest cult.
Yes.
Which they've decided the leader of the cult, which is in the volcano lair.
William Shatner.
Yeah, they're going to eat a lion to evolve into predators, which,
yes,
as we know everything about how biology works, it doesn't work.
No.
And that's the big turning point because Samson then unlocks his wild powers of being a circus lion.
Yeah.
And saves the day by having a fight with the...
So you've missed over the running gag the whole way through is that in the zoo that they're in, they sell these talking koalas, that are versions of Eddie Izzard's character, but they're these cuddly koalas, and it's like, I'm so cuddly, I love you. To the point that when they're going through New York City, they travel through the sewage system, which is why they meet the alligators in the sewers. Which is, wonderful stereotype.
Yeah.
And the alligator's like, hey, I recognize you. And they're like, I'm so cuddly, I love you. And then it turns out this wildebeest cult started because someone was flying overhead with one of those koala toys the plane. And it falls out of the plane and it falls down and it hits a lion, or it lands in front of a lion that was going to attack this wildebeest who then becomes the leader of the cult. And it goes, I'm so cuddly, I love you. So then the lions get scared and run away, and the guy's like, yes, this is our god. So they think, when the koala show up, they think he's their god. Yeah. And it just so happens to be the exact koala that was based on, which is, like, what are the odds?
It feels like a attempted The Gods Must Be Crazy reference.
Yes, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. But. There is a funny line that the koala says, which is, I had it here. Where is it? Eat your friends and be a god.
Or don't eat your friends.
Yeah. But yeah, no, just Madagascar is 100% a better movie.
Yeah.
The characters are better, the voice acting's better.
The voice acting is better. I think both movies have very big names in voice acting roles.
Yeah.
But I felt like The Wild, it's just those people doing their own voices. Like, that's just Kiefer Sutherland being Kiefer Sutherland. Whereas I think, as much as I'm not a Ben Stiller fan, he's good at voice acting because he's still acting and he's getting into that character. Like, you don't think of that as Ben Stiller, you think of it, whereas in the other one, I'm like, oh, that's Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, I if you put the Alex and Samson next to each other, you wouldn't be able to tell that it's not if you hadn't mentioned anything related to the fact that I'm a lion or this or that, the other, you would not be able to tell that they're made for animated movies except for Ben Stiller's performance. Like, there's a massive difference.
Yeah.
Because the way their performances are done, Chris Rock and David Schwimmer, who plays the hypochondriac giraffe.
And Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah, who's playing the hippopotamus. Yeah. Everything's very comical and their lines are way more punchy. Yeah. And they come off as more, it's a more entertaining
They're not
performance.
Just someone standing in a room reading a script.
Reading a line, yeah. And I think it helps with the fact that the characters in Madagascar are more animated in their physical portrayal on screen, which is obviously, they're not real animals.
I think also maybe The Wild was trying to be more serious, because they've got slightly more serious actors. Like, they have a couple, like Eddie Izzard is obviously supposed to be a more comical relief, but I think, Kiefer Sutherland, you don't tend to think of him as a comedy actor, whereas you've got Ben Stiller, Chris Rock, David Schwimmer are all, pretty well known for for comedic roles.
Yeah, it's way more slapstick in Madagascar.
Yeah.
Like, there's moments in it that are actually genuinely funny, and they're sort of like old school gags.
Yeah, and it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah. Just, I don't know, The Wild annoyed me in so many ways, and I understand why Madagascar did so much better.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that Madagascar, which is, a decent film and has gone on to be,
wildly successful.
A huge franchise. It's funny that it started with DreamWorks trying to undermine Disney's release of a movie because they got wind of what they were doing.
There were some scenes that made me a little bit disturbed in Madagascar.
Mm-hmm.
The American Beauty reference was super weird.
Yeah.
Because as a child,
you're not going to get it.
You don't understand that.
Yeah.
So that's pigeonholed in for
the adults.
For adults.
Yeah. That happens quite a lot in kids' movies.
Yeah, but explain that to your children. Like, I don't get it. It's like, oh, okay, so...
But they're not going to be looking for reference. They just think, he's having a dream and there's snakes falling on him.
With this, yeah.
They don't recognize the music, they don't understand where that has come from.
The Planet of the Apes reference was funny. Where they build the Statue of Liberty and then it catches fire.
Yeah.
And then falls down and then he's all like, you maniacs!
Yeah.
The whole sequence where Alex, played by, I can't remember his name now.
Chris Rock? No, Alex.
Alex, played by Ben Stiller, goes nuts and bites Chris Rock. That was a funny sequence. And then... Yeah,
I thought that was a funny comparison to The Wild as well, because in The Wild they go on all this stuff about him getting his animal instincts and his wild instincts, and he's seeing all these colourful things, and it turns out it's just chameleons trying to point him in the right direction because they want him to get rid of the wildebeest because they're sick of them.
And then the whole camouflage sequence with their...
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, because the camouflage thing, they turn him invisible, but then there's... What is it that causes them to... It's like jets of steam or something? I can't remember. Something that causes them to... They're like, we can't concentrate in this. And then they all get off him and run away. So they've all gotten off him, but he's still weird colours. Yeah. And then goes back to normal. It's like, that's not how camouflage works. But yeah, so they have this whole thing about his animal instincts, whereas in Madagascar... his animal instincts actually do start to kick in because he hasn't eaten in days, and then he starts to just like his instinct
about steak.
So he starts to see everyone as food, and he bites bites Marty, and it's like, so he genuinely has animal instincts that do kick in as a predator, and they don't really talk about it in those terms, whereas in The Wilds they go on and on about it, but it never happens because he grew up in the circus. And he's an idiot. Yeah,
there's so many things about The Wild that just annoyed me.
Yeah.
So much.
Mm-hmm. There's a weird musical number at the end of The Wild as well, which really annoyed me because it's when they all get on the boat, so they end up saving all the wildebeest as well, and they all get on this tiny little yacht or whatever that they had.
It's like a tugboat. It wasn't even a tugboat. It's like...
it couldn't have gotten to where they were in the first place. Never mind, turned around and gone back, full of animals. So they've got all the wildebeest, whatever, and then one of them starts to sing, which is diegetic, but then it cuts to non-diegetic music. So it's like music that's not happening in the movie, but they're all dancing to it, and then every now and then one of them will sing a line.
Yeah.
And it's just really unsettling, almost. It's really strange.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of, because there's that Coldplay break, and there's that weird soft rock break, which I don't know the song.
Yeah, I wrote down, the very last note I wrote for it was, why is the music in this movie so bad and cringy?
Yeah.
It's not even necessarily bad music. Some of it is not music I'm a fan of, but it's just badly done. It's badly inserted in and badly mixed and things like that, and it doesn't always fit with what's happening in the movie, so it takes you out of it a bit, I think, the music.
Because in Madagascar, the penguins arrive on the original container ship that they've hijacked to go to Antarctica. They've arrived in Antarctica, so in the background, so they arrived in Antarctica, realise it's crap, and then end up in Madagascar anyway, and then crash land on the island. They have this meeting farewell meeting where Alex gets sushi and then is okay with it, even though I don't know where they got the rice and nori from, but anyway. And then they're all like, see you guys later, and then they can't leave because the penguins are like, do we going to tell them? Like, no.
Do we tell them that it's out of gas?
Smile and nod.
Just smile and wave, boys.
Smile and wave. Yeah.
Smile and wave, boys.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, eh?
Yeah. So in terms
there were so many things wrong with the wild.
There's so many things wrong. One of the things I had looked at was, because I remember mentioning this earlier, was whether there were any other female voice actors. And in Madagascar, besides Jada Pinkett Smith, there are 2 female voice actors in the movie. One of them plays the old lady at the train station who beats up a lion, which I thought was hilarious when it happens. Yeah. Because they go to Grand Central Station trying to find Alex, and everyone is running and scared, and this old lady starts trying to beat up... they go trying to find Marty. I'm going to keep mixing these up. And this old lady starts beating up Alex the lion with her handbag. Yeah,
like I said, it's way more slapstick, because the repeated crotch shots are funny from a kid's point of view, but I don't... Yeah.
Yeah. And then the only other female character in the whole movie is a news reporter. That's it. There was a few more in the wild, because there was monkeys that were female, there was those weird dung beetles and stuff, so there's a few of them, but it's still like maybe 4 characters.
Yeah.
It's, they're very, very male heavy movies.
I don't know.
Interesting.
I've got nothing else.
Yeah, I think...
This is the wild just annoyed me to the point of just like I was not enjoying watching
I think Madagascar was better researched as well. Like I was looking, the animals that they call the fusa is an animal called fossa, which is related to mongoose and is native only to Madagascar.
Yeah.
So, and lemurs lemurs make up 50% of their diet, which is why the lemurs are so scared of them. And fusa is actually the Madagascar pronunciation of, or their translation of it. Yeah. So it makes sense that the lemurs who are from there are calling them fusa.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Originally, King Julian was supposed to be just a minor character. He only had 2 lines in the script.
Oh, the move it thing is... There are so many memes, and it just...
Yeah.
It's like the Frozen Let It Go thing. It's just... Once you get onto the internet and children get into it, it just snowballs from there. But seeing it... Because I've never seen Madagascar.
Yeah.
Having to live through when that was... a meme and then became cringe, and now having to sit there and watch the movie and watch the whole sequence was just like...
Yeah.
Big old sigh moment.
That's interesting, because it's just... So apparently, Sacha Baron Cohen, when he auditioned, he improvised the Indian accent, and he improvised 8 minutes of dialogue for the audition recording that weren't in the script.
So he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah, they made it into a bigger thing. I still don't... There's no reason for him to be Indian in it, though. But I mean, criticizing Sacha Baron Cohen's depiction of other nationalities is a whole other
conversation.
Yeah, that I don't really want to get into. Yeah. But it's just weird to me that both movies do these weird depictions of other cultures by people who aren't from those cultures.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense that the lemurs in Madagascar that he has an Indian accent.
Yeah.
Was why. Melman, the giraffe, when they leave the zoo, he wears tissue boxes on his feet.
Yeah.
Which is a reference to Howard Hughes, who is also hypochondriac and has OCD. He used to wear tissue boxes on his feet because he believed it would keep germs away from him.
Yeah, it's it's now a trope.
Yeah.
So they were stealing it more from the trope than because I've seen it in everything.
Have you?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen
like the Mr. Burns thing when he goes crazy and he grows like a beard and like giant long fingernails and he's peeing in bottles and wears...
That's also a Howard Hughes reference.
Yeah. So like I know it from that trope rather than the originality of Howard Hughes.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. The airplane that the lemurs have their court in is a Lockheed Electra, which is the same airplane that Amelia Earhart disappeared in.
Yeah.
So
because
the reference there is that they're supposed to be in her plane, I guess.
Yeah, because it says Madagascar Tours on the side.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But the thing that I found confusing about that was the because they're talking about the people that we've got humans here, and then it showed them the dead body.
Yeah.
And they're wearing World War II gear.
Right.
Which I found confusing because I remember history very well.
Well, Amelia Earhart disappeared in that general area in 1937.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those planes were around at that time.
Is there a running theory that Amelia Earhart died on Madagascar, or is it just a... I don't know.
I don't know.
It'd be something to look at later, and you talk, I'll do it now, actually.
I think that was the last of my fact notes, because the only other one I had was that DreamWorks had deliberately tried to undermine Disney, which was fun. But yeah, there's a few. I think there's a lot more comedy in Madagascar.
It's way more slapstick. It's way more enjoyable. The characters, I'm going to start...
because the zoo they're in is Central Park Zoo, and it's a really shitty zoo. I actually found it upsetting to watch just based on the zoo, because they're just these tiny little squares with like no fencing and no anything.
Yeah.
So in the real zoo, I think the real zoo has a similar layout, but it doesn't have a lion in it or a zebra or whatever. I think the only animal that they have in the movie that's actually in that zoo in real life is penguins.
Yeah.
But it's the whole instigating thing, and that is that the penguins are trying to escape, and then Marty gets it in his head that he can escape as well, and then he decides to just leave, but there's nothing keeping him in there, so he just leaves, and then the other guys go after him. But it's funny because they had talked about it beforehand and said, you can get out to like the wilderness of America by going to Grand Central Station and trying to head off to the countryside.
Yeah.
So when they chase him, they go to Grand Central Station, and when they get there, obviously there's a whole lot of wild animals, and they bring in this like huge amount of riot police, and they're there for the main core 4 people, but the penguins happen to be in the same area, and they're like, oh no, they've found us. And then also the chimpanzees who are in the zoo are also there.
Were they doing the two people in a trench coat bit?
I think, no, were they reading a newspaper or something? It was like, I think maybe they were doing I can't remember now, were they doing the 2 people in a trench coat bit? But it was just funny that they all ended up in the same place, even though they went separately. So it's just really funny. And then I thought it was funny that on the ship, the penguins are like looking at the crate to see where it's going, and they're like, it's all in code, boys, but it's like clearly written in plain English, they just can't read. And they ask one of the chimps, can he read? And he's like, no, I can't, but he can. And the other chimp starts like signing to him what it says. Yeah,
that's the side characters are far more interesting in Madagascar.
Yeah.
They actually they're like complete characters.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably it. They have actual, like, they're well-rounded. Like, even those chimpanzees who are in it for like a handful of scenes and then never seen again really are, we know kind of what their relationship is and whatever. Oh yeah, because that was it. They wanted to go throw poo at people.
Yeah.
And that was their whole goal. So it's when they're caught in the station, he's just like, yes, we will throw poo at them. Like it's...
if you've got poo, throw it now.
Yeah, if you've got poo, throw it now. So it's like they're supposed to be real sophisticated, but they want to just go throw poo at people.
The one that can talk is like got a British accent.
Yeah.
Like upper class British accent.
Yeah, it's real upper class. Like they're supposed to be real posh, and the other one's signing to him, and because obviously that's supposed to show that he's intelligent and that he's learned American Sign Language, because that is a common thing with like chimpanzees, orangutans, etc. That they teach, and gorillas, they can teach them sign language. So it's trying to show these are intelligent and sophisticated, and then they're like, yes, if you have poo, throw it now. And it's and then the penguins obviously have their whole thing going that I haven't seen any other Madagascar movie. I've only seen this one, and I haven't seen Penguins of Madagascar or their series or whatever. But just from this film alone, we know what their background is, what their plans are, what their aspirations are.
They're very POW-esque, sort of from that golden era of World War II movies of the prisoners trying to escape,
Yeah.
literally using a plastic spoon.
A callback to The Great Escape. I actually think I wrote that in my notes. I said they're trying to pull a Great Escape.
Yeah. Stealing plastic spoons from kids.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. It's a good touch that they, again, are researching it. They're thinking about where they're getting these things or how they're doing it. That they, they're using a plastic spoon to dig out because...
And they want popsicle sticks to shore up the tunnel so they don't get another collapse.
Yeah. So it's clever. There's definitely a lot more kind of clever moments in Madagascar.
Yeah. It's super weird having the wild where the characters look far more animal.
Yeah. But
then the behaviour of them is so bizarre in a way that it pulls you out of these animals. Like, if you just...
Yeah. Oh my god. One of the things that I know I wrote it down here is the run cycles in the wild piss me off. I don't know if any of my friends who study animation or work in animation are listening to this. If you haven't seen the wild, watch it just for the run cycles. None of those animals move like animals.
Yeah.
It's all like, it's not even uncanny valley stuff. It's just like weird, awkward. It doesn't look like it was animated by Disney because Disney know how to do run cycles.
Yeah.
But every single one of them, when they try to run, they do this weird, awkward thing that looks not like anything alive. It looks like a bad robot who hasn't calibrated its legs correctly or something.
Yeah, like those AI tests where they build AI systems that have to get over obstacles and they just let it run several thousand times.
Yeah. So when you do animation, when you study animation, one of the first things you learn is walk cycles. Because if you cannot make a character look like it is walking, you can't do it. If you can't do a basic walk cycle or run cycle, your character is never going to look like a real anything.
Yeah.
It's like absolute basics. So to have this big Disney movie where they've done these characters and they've made them, look realistic, and they've done they had you could see Samson's mane was very painterly. It looks really nice. The hair is very realistic. The fur on all of them. They've built these models, but they can't make them move in a way that looks real. And there's something really upsetting about it. So I just kept getting annoyed every time any of the characters tried to walk or run anywhere because the run cycles just pissed me off.
And that's the thing, that's the major difference between that and Madagascar is because they've made them not act or move like animals do.
Yeah.
You can get away with it. You can get away with it.
But even still, the animals in Madagascar, while they don't move like those animals do, though there's a funny joke in that because at one point he's like, no, in the wild you run on all fours because they've all been walking around like like humans, like bipeds. But they still, when they walk around like bipeds, they walk like bipeds. They look like humans would walk. And sure, it's in a cartoonish way, but it flows.
Yeah.
The way they do it in the wild just doesn't make any sense. It makes me think that they got a whole lot of people who have never animated something before. It looks like, the shitty stuff I did in second year trying to learn CGI, which Audrey can tell you all about if Audrey's listening. But it really just, if I could have animated that and I ended up not ever working in the animation industry, it doesn't make sense to me that Disney have done that. I just thought to look at the budgets while I was saying that. So the budget for the world was $80 million. So if you have an $80 million budget, why can't you get run cycles right?
Yeah, because that's how you base your model. From the stuff that I know about animating CG is you start off with a base model that is basically a skeleton. Because that's all your main points, and that's where all the, you can't have unarticulated limbs because otherwise they end up all bendy. And then you have to have a centre of mass so that gives a model mass, so when it moves it has some form of energy when it's on screen, and then you build up all the layers on top of it. So you can then grab a paw or an arm or a leg and move it in a way where it's going to work with the main core structure you built.
You shouldn't have Disney animators with an $80 million budget. It shouldn't move the same way as those shitty Brazilian rip-offs that are made in 10 weeks to try and undercut big budget movies, like Ratatouille, you know? It shouldn't move like that if you've got an $80 million budget.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that maybe they try to push up the release so that it would be closer to Madagascar, but either way it was still afterwards, so like why not just put the effort in and make it look better. So it made 102 million at box office, so it did make back the budget but not much more. Madagascar on the other hand was 75 million budget, so less in the budget, and made 542 million.
Damn, it's good profit to make kids movies.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Neither of them have a great rating though on IMDb. So The Wild is 5.2 and Madagascar is 6.9.
The Wild should be lower.
Yeah.
It should be way lower.
So they're both kind of mid-range ratings wise on there. But yeah, I don't know. That was just the thing that really
it is
pissed me off.
Patrick Warburton.
Yeah, Patrick Warburton.
So
is one of the
he's the only voice actor that stood out to me as being recognisable. Where in the other hand,
he's in Madagascar. He's in The Wild. I mean.
Yeah. So in the other hand, Madagascar, all the voice actors stand out and sound recognisable.
But you don't necessarily want them to sound recognisable. What do you mean?
No. So it's just, to me, the voice differences between the characters is better in Madagascar because, to me, even though the characters are animated, the voice actors are more recognisable because of the way they're acting.
Okay.
Versus in The Wild, where the only character voice that I recognised was like the henchman wildebeest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't necessarily need to recognise who they are, though. But, I mean, Kiefer Sutherland sounded just like Kiefer Sutherland reading a page.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
And you had William Shatner in it, sounding like William Shatner reading a page. Well, actually, William Shatner sounded pretty decent in it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't sound like just William Shatner reading a page necessarily. Yeah. He did act a bit more. Patrick Warburton is just great as a voice actor because I think he's just got great like comedic timing and stuff, and obviously he's a lot of experience as a voice actor.
I don't know, just the voice acting in Madagascar felt more authentic and better.
Yeah, I think they really acted to voice it. Like, I think they really acted is the real thing.
Yeah.
Because I think, I'd say it's very hard to do voice acting, to to really get into the character and do whatever when you are just standing, like we are now, sitting at a microphone. Which is why there are voice actors who are really good at voice acting.
Yeah.
And then there are regular actors who can go do their own live action stuff.
Yeah. And
when people start going, well, I want a big name in my animated movie, so I'm going to bring in these big name people and I don't care what they act like. It tends to turn bad, but obviously in Madagascar they did bring in big names, but they brought in big names who could do that kind of acting.
Yeah.
Which is the difference, because there are big names in both movies, and the big names in The Wild were just names.
Yeah.
Whereas the big names in Madagascar acted.
You also broke the fourth wall.
Who did?
You did.
Me? Oh, because I said we're talking to a microphone?
Yeah, because we could have been hanging upside down like bats and the audience would have never known.
Yeah, we're hanging upside down. And just someone walking by is recording our conversation. We don't know there's a microphone.
Yeah.
Definitely not, trying to engage with our audience or anything.
Yeah, no. So yes, I think The Wild should have been a lot lower in rating because that movie annoyed me. And it annoyed me in a way where it was unenjoyable.
Yeah.
Like, Gordy, on the other hand, and the Christmas movies, the Hallmark Christmas movies, annoyed me in a way where it made me more engaged in the movie.
Yeah, I'm just looking through my notes. I have one of the notes I wrote about The Wild is, this whole group of animals is incredibly irritating. And that about Richard Kind as Larry is particularly annoying.
It's just a weird
I like Richard. I'm going to step back here and say I do like Richard Kind, but in this movie he's so annoying. He's so annoying. I just couldn't get over how annoying he was. Every time he opened his mouth I was like, oh, I forgot he was in the movie and I hate him. He doesn't say anything of value at any point. He's supposed to be like comedic relief, but in terms of like being a really stupid character. but he's just a really stupid character that has no point and has Richard Kind's voice. And as much as I like Richard Kind, he has a very distinct voice that works very well as annoying characters. I think in Scrubs he played like a hypochondriac and it worked.
Yeah.
He did really well in that role, but it's like, as an already annoying character, it just made it worse.
Yeah, it's funny because the giraffe's not that bad.
She's just a sexist stereotype.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about character design.
Right.
And the koala, like, it also comes off as cute and cuddly, but obviously with the voice it's disorientating. Also,
because we live relatively close to Australia, and we know that almost definitely that koala has chlamydia.
They all do. I don't think the ones in zoos do.
In Australia they do.
Really?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. There's some stupid, 80% of koalas have chlamydia or something, so it's like... but they also just... What they do is they just eat poison until their teeth rot out of their mouths and they die of starvation.
Yeah, koalas are a mistake.
Yes.
In evolution.
Anyway, what were you saying?
I don't know anymore. I'm just picturing... I know how koalas get their... Because, eucalyptus is poison, and the only way that they can develop the enzyme that they need to digest it is they eat their mum's poo.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
They eat their mum's poo, and they develop an enzyme, and eucalyptus is poison and also has no nutritional value, and that's why koalas sleep for 20 hours a day.
Yeah, so they sleep for between 20 and 23 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they move very slowly and not very often.
And they're super vicious. They sound horrible, and they drop on people's faces and maul you.
I've held koalas twice, and they just kind of claw onto you like you're a tree and go to sleep.
Because when I was in Australia Zoo, which is a fantastic zoo, by the way.
Yeah, on the subject of zoos.
On the subject of zoos, Australia Zoo is a fantastic zoo. Steve Irwin's zoo, the late Steve Irwin.
I have also been there, but not with you.
Yeah. I got to walk a tiger and hold a snake, and I petted a koala, and the koala was like, "Oh my god, what's touching me?" And then went, "Oh no, this feels great." And then a whole bunch of other tourists got up behind me in the line because you had to stand on a little stool, and I felt really insecure about letting go of the koala because it was like pushing against the tree into my hand. Right. And I was like, if I let go, is it going to fall?
Is it going to fall down? We had, because I went with my brother, and we had previously been to a wildlife sanctuary in Hobart, in Tasmania. And in the wildlife sanctuary in Hobart, they taught us that kangaroos cannot scratch their chests because of the way their arms are positioned. So if you scratch a kangaroo's chest, they love it. They go nuts for it. So when we went to Australia Zoo...
Oh, the big giant walk-in bit with the
there's this huge part with so many kangaroos, and there's people, so many people around because they all want to see kangaroos. Yeah. But we felt like gods because when you scratch the kangaroos like that, they are loving it, and then the other kangaroos come over and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? Can you do that to me?" And they've got a joey hanging out of their pouch. You're like, "Okay, hello," and then everyone's like, "What did you do to the kangaroo that they wanted to come over?" It's like, "Oh, I'm just like a kangaroo whisperer over here,
That's the other thing that I'd like to point out before we trail off again on the subject of this. It's the two sequences when they're in the zoo are super depressing. Yeah. Because despite your feelings on, whatever when it comes to your own personal diet, there's a huge difference between old school zoos, which are basically animal prisons, versus wildlife sanctuaries and rehabilitation centers that they do for displaced animals because of environmental issues, which are also related to human dickishness.
I think for most big zoos nowadays, it's all about conservation and research and things like that, and breeding programs to keep animals around. But there still are zoos that exist that are like the Central Park Zoo in the movie.
Because it's terrible. They're living in 5x5.
Yep. Because I've been to a zoo like that, and it upset me so much. I won't name and shame it, but it really, really upset me how how tiny the enclosures were and how bored the animals were and things like that. I think Dublin Zoo does a pretty good job. I think San Diego Zoo is fantastic and Australia Zoo is fantastic.
They make a joke about that in Madagascar.
Yeah, I thought that was funny because we had talked about it, I think, after watching The Wild. Or at some point we had talked about zoos and I'd said San Diego Zoo was a really good one, and then in Madagascar they joke about it. Because when they arrive at Madagascar, they think they're going to another zoo and they get there and they're like, oh, you know, white sand and, you know, realistic environment, we must be in San Diego Zoo. But the zoo that they start off in is very much how the animals are treated as well is very much for the entertainment of people. So they're in these shitty little enclosures, tiny enclosures with nothing to actually keep them going. Like Marty has a treadmill. They put a treadmill in so that the zebra can run on the spot. It's
astroturf they're standing on.
Yeah, because the penguins dig up through it and it's astroturf. So it's really upsetting, and all they know about is posing for humans and putting on a show, and that's quite upsetting to think about.
To the point, I think he smashes out the ambient noise which was playing on speakers so they could go to sleep to the sounds of like car tires screeching, gunshots, and like standard central New York City cartoonish sound effects. And it's like, that's so disturbing.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. Compared to zoos, obviously, where I think the zoo in the wild is a little bit better because it seems to have slightly more naturalistic habitats, but it's still not.
Yeah, but then in saying that though, literally the zoo closes and they all just leave their cages and then go curling. Which that whole sequence is just super weird.
It doesn't make any sense. And they're curling with turtles. They're not like using like a puck or whatever.
And then using the snake. Don't watch The Wild.
Unless you're an animator and you want to see what a bad run cycle looks like.
If you want to see what you could get away with for $80 million.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I'm sure the animators didn't see much of the 80 million.
No.
Because they do not get much money.
No.
Alright, I think that's about as much as we're going to say before we just keep ranting about zoos for a while.
Yeah.
So as usual, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at ittakes2_pod, or on Facebook at ittakes2pod, or on our website at ittakes2.co.nz.
Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.